Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Amar with ZenMade.
All
Jeremy, you
right.
want to kick us off with the topic?
Yeah, we should talk about marketing. Recently, we've been spending some good amount of effort on marketing, and then we go back and forth with Amar, and that gets slightly frustrated where they say like, oh, well, I focus on my user, I create stuff and it works. It's like annoying, like, what stuff? I just want to shake Amar. And I'll be able to do that next week. So I'll be able like to physically shake him. So, tell me the secrets.
The next podcast episode, Amar almost dies from violent shaking.
So if you're struggling with marketing at the moment, or if you want to know more, or just have a laugh and have fun, then just follow this episode. Hopefully that should be a good one.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm just trashing my marketing. Go ahead, like carry on, whatever.
Well, what I was going to say, I just want to lay kind of the groundwork so that people kind of know where you and I are coming from, like in this conversation. So Jeremy recently has been focused a lot on kind of like his SEO, on generating backlinks, and essentially getting more organic traffic through Google. And so we have someone, you've got someone on your team that's focused on that full time, right?
Well, part of it, I think there are like other things, but it's like part of one of the efforts. Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And so we were talking about this yesterday on our mastermind with the other SaaS guys that we chat with like every week. And so we were just chatting about it a little bit. Jeremy had actually gone in and looked at the domain ranks of the various like softwares in our little mastermind group. And so ZenMade has really blown up, particularly since around the beginning of 2019. And I mean, honestly, yours are looking pretty good, Jeremy. Like I didn't really see anything like that.
It's worse than everyone else, every of my competitors. But I tell you what, during I realized, with the new guy in marketing coming in, one of the first thing he did that suddenly like gave us like a big spike in domain reputation was to remove us from super dodgy websites. So there is a disallow list that you can use in Google. And he basically looked and investigated at where they came from. And it seems like one of our competitors, I mean, I can only assume this is one of our competitors, actually paid for all links to QuickMail to be in those sort of like shady websites so that you actually lower our domain reputation. And you can very much see it in Ahref. You could see like there is like a massive suddenly spike of number of websites that reference us for quite a long time. Like I think it was 9 months or something like that. And then as soon as we added like the disallow list and so on, it suddenly like dropped like drastically.
Interesting.
And then we contacted them, and of course they say like, oh no, we're doing it organically. But then it links to a website where it's like, pay us X number, and then we'll add some links. It's black hat.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's lame, but it happens, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to sort of like take the other approach and say, okay, well, let's get some good domains to start, linking us as well. And I know that's where the conversation started by like focus on doing content for your user instead.
Yeah. Interesting. I may look at that and check the quality of ZenMade's backlinks, because I wonder if us just removing a couple of the poor quality ones might have like a similar effect. I don't think it would like jump it drastically. But
maybe
I think
you were lucky and no one really tried to do a black hat stuff on you. So listen, if you're a competitor of Amar, just have fun, poke at him, and add him to shady.
I didn't even tell you about the yeah, well, I'll tell you now quickly for everyone's amusement. But we started advertising our free plan again on Facebook, and someone came in and was like, oh, like this competitor offers the same thing, and I responded. I don't know if you saw that in France, the tiff between Karim Benzema and Olivier Giroud. It's like two of like the strikers in France, and the Benzema goes like comparing us as like comparing like a Formula One race car to a go-kart. And that's what he said about this other guy who like plays on his team, right? Like just completely unnecessary. And so I pretty much said the exact same thing. If I was just like, this is like comparing like a NASCAR car to like a go-kart with a missing wheel. Like these do not even compare. It's like,
but they're free. They also have a free plan. So
exactly. Yeah,
that's the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the same. So, yeah. So, anyways, yes, you poke me, I will poke you back harder. So, yeah. But in terms of like the SEO stuff, so I know that what we were talking about yesterday on the call is that Jeremy's been quite focused on like generating links, right? Is a big focus on kind of getting more backlinks, because that is something, that is something that we know that like impacts SEO, right? And so for ZenMaid, we've never focused on getting backlinks at any point in our 8 years in business. We've just always kind of taken the approach that it almost like if you build it, they will come kind of approach, but it's more like
works,
if you,
right? Unless you do marketing.
but the whole thing is it's more like if you build out the marketing, they will come, right? Which I think is different. So we've always focused on just putting out really high quality content and then promoting that content to our audience, and also making like our like industry partners aware of the content that we're putting out. And then a really big thing, which I think is actually very similar to the strategy that you're taking, but was a little bit less intentional on our part, is we go out of our way to promote all of our industry partners like content that will link to their content. We'll send out emails about their content. If they put something good out that is really going to help our industry, we will send out emails about their content completely unasked for. And so what happens is a lot of them will reciprocate, and a lot of them will end up linking back to our site. But for us, we've never done that because we're looking for backlinks. It's because we essentially want them to share with their audience of like, oh, ZenMaid, put out like this thing, right? Or every now and again, some like industry influencer will be like, hey guys, if you're not reading the ZenMaid magazine, then you're completely like missing out. It has some of the best knowledge that you can find like online about running like a successful maid service, right? And so that was kind of like our approach, and that's what you and I were talking about yesterday. My point was just I've never been intentional about SEO. All that I've done is thought about like, how can we help the user? And actually, this is something I don't know if we've talked about this before, but the way that I think about marketing is any time that you help your customers, or you help like your target customers or your potential customers, anytime you help them and you don't ask for anything in return, is a form of marketing. That it builds goodwill, it builds your brand awareness, and eventually if they need your service, then they come and they sign up like for your service, right? And so that's kind of the approach that we've taken with it. And I mean, yeah, you were looking at the domain rank. Apparently it's working. I haven't looked at that in years, right? Like I just don't pay attention to that. So I don't know. That's how. But
you may have paid attention to it if at some point you realize that all your competitors have a much higher one, and then you'll probably start digging into why, what's going on and what happens, right? And you can be not intentional about something, but if it didn't work, then you would probably have stopped or changed a strategy or do something else, because at the end of the day, we only have like a finite number of hours to work on something and then to produce stuff, right?
Yeah, we've always felt that producing that content would have lots of like kind of tangential and like ongoing benefits, whether that was SEO or whether it was just helping our current customers to grow, because when they grow, we grow, right? So we've always committed to that, of like, regardless of what the numbers say, we've always committed to continuing to just put out like high quality content. And the fact that it's working on the SEO front is really just like a cherry on top. I mean, of course, it's very important, but I would not have stopped creating this content just because other people were like ranking better than us, or, we're getting like more traffic. We were never doing this for the SEO like numbers to begin with. I mean, we did genuinely expect this to help our SEO a lot, and obviously it has, but that wasn't the reason.
But look where you would be if you would have also focused on the SEO as well.
Yeah, I've thought about that as well. I've definitely thought about that as well. And like, actually, I think that I probably should look into it, because we have
Hey, I got a tactic I can share with you about how to get more links.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to think, because we did pay for help with SEO, but like we didn't they were trying to get us backlinks on other sites, and at some point I was just like, guys, like, you're getting backlinks. You're getting backlinks on sites that like aren't for our customers, and we shut it down because we didn't care that it would help our SEO.
You're absolutely right. It has to be about the same ecosystem. But did you have like a sort of like audit for your website, like some of the rookie mistakes not to do, like, you need to do the canonical or whatever, to at least
Yeah, we've done
He's
the
the
basics.
Google God to some extent, right?
We've done the basics. Yeah, exactly. We went through and done that because we always are trying to get like kind of the low hanging fruit. So we did have an audit done and we did fix up some things. But then like at the same time, we've also had SEO consultants going like, oh, well, like if this is the keyword that you need to rank for, then like it should be in the URL, it should be in this, it should be in that. And we were just like, no, like this is written for the users. This is written like for the users. It's not written for Google, right? And like that's always kind of been like where I've drawn the line of like there's nothing on our website that sounds awkward to a real human being. If it sounds awkward to a real human being, it's not worth the SEO juice.
Absolutely. So when you say like, you know, we've been focusing on, you know, on doing quality content for helping people. I mean, I've been doing that too. So clearly, like look at, for example, my article about cold email, which is quickmail.io/cold-email. It's basically everything I know about it inside, you know, a massive 14,000 words article. And yet, you know, it doesn't necessarily perform super well. So you have to wonder, like, is it because people go to it and then they don't, you know, watch it very long? Is it because the piece is too long? Is it because it's too broad, like of a subject? It's like, you could basically do like a curriculum, you know, based on just this article. It's like a book. It's as big as a book.
Well, I think the one thing is that I think you're just thinking about one specific thing that you've done. And that, so like keep in mind for ZenMaid, since the middle of 2018, we have effectively published a new high quality blog post with an accompanying video that's on YouTube, which of course Google loves because like they're both owned by Google. And we've done that essentially every single week since the middle of 2018. I have no idea which ones of our articles rank the best. Like there's a couple off the top of my head that I know are more popular, right? That we have one that's like 21 ways to market your maid service. So if you look up how to market your maid service, that's the number one like result, right? But we've essentially been publishing unbelievably consistently. We've been paying for traffic so then we're getting traffic that comes in consistently, that stays on the site for a long time.
So by ads, right? With ads.
Yeah, we've been promoting that content, right? That like it's not just that we've put it up and then we just sort of leave it, right? That we do a lot of things with those content. Like I know that you put up like that one guide, but if I had just put up one thing, I mean, and obviously I know that you've also put up other stuff, but to me, I think the consistency is probably one of the biggest things that's likely helping like our rankings, right? Is Google looks at us and sees an ultra legit site that is putting out good content, you know, on a regular like basis, and like every new article that we put out probably helps all of the articles across the board to rank just a tiny like bit better, right? But it's definitely not like one or two massive articles that are like driving, you know, I mean, I'm sure there is there is an 80-20 here,
right? We do put a new article every week. They're pretty good as well.
Are you promoting them?
The promotion, no, it's something that effectively we don't do much.
Yeah.
Well, we do actually in our newsletter. Like we have a newsletter every week. We send like one tidbit of information. We also explain what the new blog articles are about. But of course, the blog article is trying to put up from different angle, right? And then you're basically addressing everyone if you're doing those sort of approach. You know, you're not like people on my list are people who are interested in cold outreach in general. But if you're saying like something for PR, for example, like a cold outreach for PR, how to do it super well, you will find a great article for it. We will also mention it on the list, but maybe it will be of interest of like 5 or 10% of the list.
That's good. That's a good thing. That's a very, very good thing, right? Okay. That's actually that's what you want. Is you want like, hey, do you do cold outreach for PR, or have you ever considered it as a channel for your business? If so, then this is the article for you. That's a good thing, right? That's something that like Tim Ferriss has talked about, where he's like, you know, if I write 5 or 8 articles, right, and only one of them is truly relevant to like one specific person in my audience, if that article is good enough that it's a life-changing article for them, they're not going to care that the other 7 aren't specifically for them. So if you try writing for your entire list, all of a sudden you're going to start putting out completely like trash content, right? Yeah, because you've got to like dilute it so much. So I think that's actually a good thing. You're doing well there. Yeah, we definitely do that, right? If we promote every single thing that comes out, and some of our best content, like that 21 ways to market article, we send paid traffic to because it just gets like so many clicks. But we didn't know before we published that article that it was going to have that sort of result. And we have a couple other ones that were like massive pieces that completely flopped, even though they're really, really good, good like information, right? And they just don't kind of get it. So yeah, we take a very shotgun approach, right? It's a very shotgun approach. And then once something works, then we try to like really amplify it. Do you want me to share? I think you're already familiar with it, but do you want me to just share quickly, like in a nutshell, our summit strategy, just for like the listeners quick?
Please,
yeah,
please. So even for me, it'll be a good refresher.
Yeah. So essentially, so what I was saying that we've put out content ultra consistently since the middle of 2018. What's interesting was that sometime in 2017 is when I personally stopped doing a lot of our content. That I was just like, I was sick of it, right? Like I've been doing it for 4 years. I've been writing all these things. Like I knew the industry well. I didn't want to be writing any more content, creating any more content, doing any more videos, all of that stuff.
As you at the moment, yes.
Right. And so the big challenge that I had was, how do I keep like our content machine going without or like while keeping like the quality high? Because one thing is, I always see people going like, oh, like I'm like a SaaS writer. And it's like, you're not like a SaaS writer. Like there's no such thing as like as a SaaS writer, right? There's only such thing as like writers that are like, that actually know like the industry that you're talking about. And so I essentially realized that the real challenge was getting true expertise without having the actual experts writing the articles, because most of them were very, very bad writers, right? And so that's where the summit came in. So in 2018, we started running the Made Summit, which you guys can check out at madesummit.com. And with that, we essentially invited all of the industry experts, the industry influencers. We invited all of them to come and to speak at this 1 week event that we did, 5 days. I think it was 40 or 45 talks the first year. This last year we had almost 70. And essentially it was all of the actual like experts, and then a couple ZenMade customers who asked if they could like speak. And we had all of them over 5 days give presentations that were anywhere from like 15 minutes to, I think there were a couple that were as long as an hour and a half. And then what we did is we hired one talented content writer, and we sent her all of these videos, and we're essentially was just like, take the actual expertise here, take screenshots of whatever you need to, take like images of the slides, and create standalone articles that are between like whatever word count that we gave them. Right. And so that was essentially what we've done. That's how we've managed to come out with expert content every single week for 3 years now. And, you know, there's a lot more to the summit than that. It's a massive thing to organize and to do. But in a nutshell, that's essentially how we've managed to create expert content without having our writers be actual experts.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And a question for you: why did you use madesummit.com instead of actually just pointing to ZenMade/summit or something like that?
When we were trying to come up with the idea, one of the other marketing problems that I was trying to solve is I was trying to figure out, how do we come up with some sort of marketing resource that can be shared without it seeming like you're sharing ZenMade, right? That essentially we wanted something that wasn't actually like, you know, on the surface related to ZenMade, so that anyone in the industry would share it. We thought that if it was zenmade.com/summit, then folks that used other softwares in the industry would be less likely to share it or to recommend it. right? And so we decided to go with a completely like separate brand for it. It also made it easier because we were using a third-party software, so it was a lot easier to set it up on like a dedicated domain. But that was like the single biggest thing, was like, we want people sharing this because it's amazing information without feeling like they're necessarily sharing or endorsing ZenMaid. Now, of course, every single person that shared it helped our business, but didn't feel that way.
Yeah, and it's probably what the biggest sponsor was, probably ZenMaid, right? The golden, platinum, whatever sponsors.
Exactly.
Did you get money from your competitors trying to also advertise on this summit?
I don't think so. We let one of our competitors speak, that I think he's spoken the last 3 years, and he runs madecentral.com, which is a ZenMaid competitor, but they're much higher priced. And for most people, it's like at a glance, they should know based on where they are in their company of, is it Made Central or is it ZenMaid? There's very few people that are actually comparing the two.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that, we allowed that.
It's the same for me on GMAS, which allow us to be like the founder of GMAS, and I allow to actually effectively exchange a lot of information, speak freely, and have fun, because our audience are very different, and so therefore there is very little, if any, overlap, kind of thing. Cool. How did your competitor react to this sort of like marketing stunt, in a sense, like doing that like webinar, summit stuff? Did you see any competitor summit being built because of this or anything?
I don't think so, no. 2 or 3 of like the industry influencers tried to do like their own versions of it, like in the next like year or so, but it helped for us to be like the first to market, and we did it way bigger and way better than anyone in the industry had ever seen. We got multiple comments from the actual speakers going, this is by far the smoothest experience that I've ever had with like this sort of like technological thing. They were essentially sending us like pre-recorded webinars, and then had to be there at the specific time to answer questions in the chat and stuff like that. And they were just like, everything was unbelievably easy, right? That they pretty much put together their presentation, they sent it to us, and we took care of everything else, the marketing, all of that stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't actually know if any of our competitors tried to do like anything different, but so the other big reason, right, is that that we did like the Made Summit, right, is because obviously there can only be one Made Summit. That if you do the ZenMaid Summit, then they can be like, oh, like we're gonna do like the Made Central Summit, and we're gonna do it bigger and better, right? But if they try to do like the Made Central Summit when we've already got the Made Summit, it automatically makes them just seem like an also ran, right? As opposed to it being like their branded thing. So we essentially got to own the market in that little area by doing this, by buying that domain of like, there's only one Made Summit. They can try to do another summit for Maids, but it's not the Made Summit. Got right? It. That's ours. So yeah.
Interesting. How did you actually? Well, I know you converted people from the summit. Do you actually track that in terms of marketing? Like, do you track a lot about your activities or anything? Nope. Well, how do you actually know where to put the efforts then? On what activity?
It's very like intuitive.
It's working somehow.
It's like a very intuitive kind of thing. Like I know for a fact that the summit worked very, very well, and that was very, very obvious, and I didn't need to track any numbers to know that, right? And I feel like actually that's probably the best way to describe like how I essentially decide like what's working and like what's not working, is like, if you need to check the actual numbers and to see exactly how many conversions that something got to know whether it's working or not, then it's not working well enough, right? Like it should be completely blatantly obvious in everything that happens. So for us, we shut off the free trial ads, and when we did actually dig into like the sign up numbers, it was unbelievably clear that I didn't need to have any exact numbers. I could just eyeball it and immediately see that it wasn't working, right? So with the summit, yeah, I mean, we were the talk of the industry for 2 weeks. Right? Like that alone was worth its weight in gold, regardless of how many people actually ended up signing up immediately after and all of that stuff. So like I could probably go in, I think that we've added in now on like our onboarding, I think in our onboarding, we have the question of like, how did you hear about ZenMaid? And we have a bunch of check boxes there, and we've added in like the Made Summit. And so that definitely gets checked every now and again, but I've never looked at the actual numbers on it.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'm a number guy, so
yeah,
I definitely always look at the numbers.
Yeah. I've always found it to be a complete waste of time. Like it just, I think it just has to do a lot with just, who we are like personally and stuff, that like I get very stressed out and like my head begins to hurt if I look at numbers. Like to me, it's just like I look at it and
look at numbers, but you could definitely have some type of KPI or return on investment or things like that. Like how many people?
Why?
Well, how many people did you put on the seminar, and you could have put on something else that could have been more, impactful? I don't know.
Don't care. Like I didn't have any other ideas for it, right? Like that's like the whole thing, right?
That's a good point.
Like it was by far the best idea that we had. Like everything kind of lined up with the positioning, with the branding, with the messaging on it, like all of that stuff. It put us in the spot that we wanted to be, like in the industry. And so like in a lot of ways, I felt like it couldn't fail from the beginning, right? So yeah, like now we do it every year. And what's funny is that the people that have been through it are like 50-50 to actually come back, because once you get beyond a certain point, most of the talks are way too kind of like, I don't even want to say like high level, but like not as like detailed or tactical, right?
Yeah, not tactical.
Where it's like, oh, like, here's how to build a hiring system. And it's like any maid service that already has 15 cleaners, they already have a system like that in place. They're not.
So it's more the entry, entry gateway to, that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's probably up to like 10 employees. I would say that any maid service owner that has less than 10 employees is going to be like, hell yes, like let's be on here. And then what works perfectly for us is that's where like 80 or 90% of ZenMaid customers sign up, is they sign up if they're below 10 employees. If they have more than 10 employees, they're not likely to choose ZenMaid. But if they sign up with 7 employees and then they grow to 15, they'll stay on ZenMaid for life. And so it really just focuses a lot like on our sweet spot.
No, that's really nice. On our end, we started to put some stuff, finally, some consistency in place in terms of, blog, article, publish, newsletter now.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
I receive like a newsletter every week now.
Same.
About some cool stuff. Oh, you also registered? Man,
oh no! I meant for ZenMaid. I get one every Saturday, and it's a newsletter that comes from me, and I'm like, I've never seen this. Like I didn't write any.
Oh, that's
of this,
interesting. It doesn't actually come from me. This newsletter, like it comes
I
from
think
Pavel.
It probably should. They like none of your audience cares about Pavel. No offense to him, but he's just the marketer, right? Well, think about it. Like do you care with any product that you get if someone like contacts you and it's like, oh hey, like I'm the marketer here. It's like, okay, I don't care.
Do you
right?
care about who it is? Like, or do you care like you probably haven't run like a maid business for years now, and
but I'm the face of the business.
Right.
I'm the face of the business. So for me, it has to come from me, or it has to come from like one of the 3 or 4 maid service owners that are on our team, and anyone else that it would be coming from, it should come from me. Even if it's a message about support, it doesn't come from our head of support. It comes from me, because like people care when they get an email from me, and like no offense to anyone else on my team, but they don't care when they get an email from like our head of marketing or whatever, right? Like I actually think you'd probably immediately see like more click-throughs, more responses, right? You'd probably see a lot more people going, hey, thanks, Jeremy. This is really cool. If you just signed off with Jeremy instead of Pavel, right? And like, again, that's nothing against him, but everyone knows who's behind the product.
I should just hire more Jeremys so they could all sign Jeremy.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
That would work.
Yeah, at least it's a common name, right? Like, could you imagine if I tried to hire more on Mars?
It's tougher. Yeah, the market is smaller for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I don't necessarily, 100% agree. Like, as soon as the content is interesting, then that's okay. Lots of people didn't hear about me. maybe the title do matter, like, where are they, like, are they the founder, or like would they or someone else on the team? It's interesting subject. I think we changed at some point from my name to whoever write the stuff. I don't really remember why exactly. I'll just ask them again, but I think even came from me asking to repeat it.
Yeah, because the other thing is that the other thing that you can do is you can have it sent from you, but then the reply goes to Pavel.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like
it goes to support at the moment. It goes to support
exactly.
and then Pavel or Christian just go ahead and then just answer it.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's a support question, so therefore it's Elaine or Zane or whoever, and maybe it's even me sometimes. But okay.
We had it set up so that I could write a personal note at the top of every newsletter where I could just share something of like, oh, like, hey, just wrapping up ZenMaid's team retreat here in Cologne. Enjoy this week's content, right? And it would just be something like that. But then at some point, like I wasn't even doing that, and I just
I was like thinking, like, do you keep doing that? Like what value does that add?
Yeah. Well, it does actually add a nice like personal touch, and we do get more responses when I add those sorts of things, because I do get people going like, oh, hey, like that's so cool, like enjoy Germany. Or you'll occasionally get people going like, oh, like my family is like from there, you should visit this, right? And you do actually get a lot more like engagement on that. But at some point it became too much of a chore. And so essentially what I told the team is like, hey, like I'll jump in there and write it like if I want to, but the process now needs to assume that I'm not going to. So like just assume that, it's not going to happen. But it does actually make a difference. It really does. It changes the engagement.
Definitely when I was in, it's funny enough, like when I was in Germany and I was doing support, I just answer and say, hey, sorry, I'm a bit late on answering. Here's a picture of where I am right now. Whatever. And then of course, like people, oh, cool, you're in Germany. I recognize I've been, whatever,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right. So I'll update you, in a few weeks or months about how marketing effort. In fact, actually just next week when I'm going to, see you live, I'm going to update you on our marketing efforts, where we're at and what we're going to do. But you heard it, everyone. If you want to be as successful as Amar, just do your own summit.
Yeah, right. We've been talking about that actually. Yeah, Heather and I are going to share a lot more. I think you and I had mentioned that of like, talking about kind of what our strategy was there, because I mean, this last year was crazy. I mean, we made $25,000 running an event that's essentially our content marketing for the entire year.
Yeah,
right. Like we got paid to do all of our marketing. It's kind of crazy. So we're probably gonna talk about that and like break down kind of what our approach was and all that stuff, and then also like what's changing for next year.
We used to do that. Actually, that reminds me. We used to do that at some or try or experiment with it. Like, I have like a podcast with Jack about like cold outreach.
Yep.
And I used to have someone who actually take that podcast and then convert it into, an article, but it didn't really turn out to be that impactful, from the.
Well, one thing is you've got to stick with it for a long time. And then if you're talking about 4 years ago when you weren't doing much other marketing and stuff, right? Like all marketing kind of plays a part to kind of create that, like that upward spiral. So like the whole thing is like, if you had stuck with that by this point, you'd probably have a higher domain rank because you would have been publishing consistently like this entire time and everything.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Maybe, I did it for not long enough.
Because it takes a lot of time, right? Like I was about to point that out to you, like, oh, like, I'll update you in like in a couple of weeks. And it's like the work that you guys are doing right now is barely going to reflect in the next couple of weeks. I mean, we're talking like Q2 of next year is when you'll probably begin seeing like significant kind of SEO like benefits. In the meantime, you can track the links, all that. I mean, actually,
because we start seeing the results already. So that's very interesting and encouraging to think like maybe we'd see it earlier than it should be, but definitely there may be a bigger payoff.
I would be evaluating it more on how you're doing like in 6 months. I mean, that's what I was saying, when we were chatting in the group, that you were saying, oh, like what changed in January 2019? Because that's when everything jumped. And I was thinking about it. I was like, nothing changed then. But then I realized that it's actually, we had started 6 months before publishing content every single week at the end of the first summit that we did, which was in the summer of 2018. And so around 2019 is probably when Google began to realize like, oh, like these guys are taking this seriously, right? And like people are staying on their page for a long time. They're publishing every single week. And I think in Google's eyes, that's when we became like a quality site, right? So for you, you know, I think you're already doing great, but I think that your real results are going to come in another like 6 months if you stay consistent the entire time.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, this year we're really going after, you know, some initiatives, some marketing initiatives finally.
Yeah, and it's good to see. I mean, it really is. Yeah, I think you're going to see that growth, that growth engine, not even like restart, but just like, you know, begin to really like be consistently higher than where it is, right? And that's the point.
All right. Well, anything else?
Follow us on Twitter.
Always on Twitter.
That's pretty much it. Hit the subscribe button down below, like, send it to your mom.
Your dog, you know, if your dog likes video on YouTube, just put us, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you obviously like walking around listening to podcasts. Your dog probably does too. Give it a shot.
All right. You heard the man. I talk to you later.
All right. Sounds good.
Have fun.